I'd turn the soup on and I'd sit on the floor and I'd just cry. And I would cry for 20 minutes till my soup was done. And I'd sort of go, okay, and I'd have my soup and then I'd go back to cold calling.
Hello, team. Today, we're going to be speaking to a very, very special person. This is James Burtt. Who is James Burtt? James Burtt launches podcasts. He's all things professional about actually getting your podcast monetized. He's looking after some of the top podcasts in the country, from James Sinclair all the way down to Ted Baker, have you know. He's going to tell us his story and how he came from crying in his soup in the kitchen to making himself the number one go-to person for podcasts. Let's get into it. James, welcome.
Thank you for inviting me here. I've never been to this part of Baddo Podcast.
Have you not?
This is beautiful.
We are in the salon. It's
This
very
is where
lovely.
the brides get ready?
This is where brides get ready. It's where Ollie makes all his content, don't you, Ollie? He gets all his equipment in here, and it's a nice quiet space out of the way of the main estate. So
This
it's
is
good.
Driving in here, it makes me want to be a better person. I came down that driveway, I'm like, do you know what? One day, son, you'll get there.
But you do
I'll
the
cut the
driving
grass if I have
sometimes, James, and I have to pull up Sam, our poor, hard-working head gardener, and go, you obviously had a drink that night because that line's slightly out of her. He doesn't like that at all.
My first ever job was as a greenskeeper. So I love a straight line on grass.
Really?
I love a straight line on grass.
So early morning, swishing the greens and all the rest
Swishing
of
the
it.
greens.
Yeah.
I was the bunker boy at
Oh, yeah.
13.
Steady,
I was
steady.
the bunker
You
boy.
can't
I'm
say
sure they were
that.
shouting bunker boy. It was something like that anyway. It definitely had a cur at the end of it. Definitely.
That's hilarious.
True story. Yeah, I was a greenkeeper.
When I said we wanted to go back on your career, I thought you've gone slightly too far.
Slightly too far. Yeah, all right. I can fast forward a little
So
bit.
how did we get into media and so? Tell us what happened. What happened?
So I was a holiday rep.
Okay.
According to the Saturday Telegraph, I was the worst holiday rep in the world. Front page news, apparently. I never saw the article. They
Right.
were probably right.
Yeah.
And then I was a hotel entertainer,
Okay.
which might not surprise you.
All right.
So I used to do like the singing and dancing shows in hotels. And then
Okay.
I was in bands and stuff like that and did touring stuff. And then I was like, do you know what? I need a proper job because I was away, all of the summer holidays.
So
I
a
was away.
flamboyant show off is really where you started.
Essentially,
Yeah.
which was quite obvious to my parents early, I think. And then I just needed the music industry was a dodgy old place, and I was like, I need a proper job here.
Right.
So I got into broadcast PR. The slight challenge was I didn't know what broadcast PR was. I just thought it sounded cool. I was like, does that mean I'm going to be on Radio 1? Like it surely must do. And I fell in love. I loved radio because I listened to it when I was on. I used to tour all around the country, and I'd listen to hours and hours and hours of radio, especially like late night radio because we'd do gigs at night. So I love like late night formats of content. And so then I went into broadcast PR, and I worked with very, very quickly because I was quite good at selling. Had the gift of the gab, again, extreme show off. I ended up working with like Thomas Cook and Nando's and Xbox and all these huge companies within 18 months. And I was like an account director within 18 months and all this sort of stuff. I didn't really know what I was doing. I just was good at selling. And I was like, I love radio, but I'd like to be on the other side of the microphone. So that's how it all started. And I found a radio station, a digital radio station that played new and unsigned music. And I was like, this is really cool. And I just tweeted them, and the CEO tweeted me back and was like,
money? Was there any money? Or was it?
It was just a PAYE job.
Yeah, okay.
PAYE job. I was like 24 or something like that. Lived at home with.
But
my
you're just
mum
not.
and dad for a
You're
bit.
notching up the experience thing. So there's a bit of a resume thing being built up from that.
Yeah, and again, I got headhunted from that first job very quickly. So I went on to another quite poorly paid job, but in a slightly better location. And I was just getting myself close to the thing.
Right.
I was in 5 Golden Square, which was next door to Absolute Radio. So like, if I get close, I thought proximity. I think there's power in proximity.
Yeah, no,
if I
there
get
is, yeah.
close,
Or rubbing up against where you want to be and the
Yeah,
stuff you want to be
exactly
involved
that.
in. Yeah.
yeah. And then I tweeted this radio station. And the CEO was like, "Oh, thanks very much." I was like, "I think it's really cool what you're doing." He was like, "Oh, we're taking on presenters." I was like, "I want to be a presenter," and that was it. And then I was on a digital radio station 6 months later, doing their weekend breakfast show.
My nephew has moved from Texas to the village next to Silverstone racetrack.
Right.
Where's that? Oxfordshire.
Yeah,
isn't
it's
it?
out that, yeah.
Oxfordshire. So he's near He wants to be a racing engineer.
Oh, really?
He sent all his CVs and stuff and got nowhere. He's now made more headway being a waiter in a pub. That they all come in.
Yeah.
And they've given him all the contacts.
Great move.
I'm telling you, he's moving stuff. He's getting positions in there, getting weekend work experience. I mean,
that's what you got to do.
Wow, you know. So go on, I digress. Go.
No, but I think that's a real. If this is for entrepreneurs and business people, I think there's a real superpower in being willing to make moves like that, even if you can't see the end value necessarily from day one. There is huge value in doing all of those sorts of things. Yeah. Exactly what I did. Like I literally moved to Golden Square because it was where Absolute Radio was based.
How did the first day of presenting go?
Well, it was all right. Well, we did quite well.
Energy and no content.
Yeah, pretty much. It was all pre-recorded. We had a good shtick, me and my co-host,
right.
And we had done really well. We were full of bluster and bravado and all the rest of it. And very quickly people loved the show. But then they brought in the ex-head of Radio 1. So it was the maddest radio station. This was another reason I wanted to be involved in it. So it was the apprentice to the Director General who had set it up, who's the youngest ever apprentice at the BBC.
Right.
Decided he hated the BBC. Played those big drums, the timbra or the timbre or whatever. Really eclectic geezer.
Right.
Ended up dating a supermodel and based in Newcastle. The whole thing was mad. It was the ex-CTO of the BBC, who was the other person. They took over Century Radio's building at Gateshead. So there was like a space for like 400 staff and there was like 20 of us. And then they brought in the ex-head of Radio 1 as the head of content, a guy called Trevor the Hatchet Dan. So I was like, I just want to be around all of these sorts of people. So it went really well. Again, useful, the gift of the gab. Again, play to the skills that you've got. We very quickly realised that actually we were playing new and unsigned music. So we had the biggest collection of unsigned music in the country that wasn't terrible sort of jazz panpipes or knockoff versions of the Beatles. And someone in a meeting went, "Why are we not selling this into like companies to use this instead of like PRS registered music, which you'll know very well here. PRS and PPL licenses are a fortune.
Fortunes, yeah.
And so Paul Campbell, who's the CEO, who's a guy I've still got a lot of respect for and a good relationship with, he was like, "Would you head that up and see if we can make something of this?" I was like, "Cool." So I just started cold calling
sales
shops.
and
So I did. So we got it into 99p stores and Thornton's Chocolates and British Heart Foundation, and we basically worked out how we could create this license-free music.
And not covers, just that they're genuine.
Genuine. So tracks. So it's bands like Jungle and London Grammar before they popped and were big. Like it was a breeding ground for this talent, and there was a monetization model.
Wow.
Which also came in useful because Trevor Dan swiftly sacked me from the radio. He's like, "You are literally the worst radio presenter I've ever heard," which I was a bit offended with, but the day before he turned up at the station, we were running a feature called Cheese or Breeze, where I'd climb onto the fourth floor and I'd throw 2 lumps of cheese out, and listeners had to guess which one would land first. Is it going to be the Gorgonzola or the Brie? Cheese or Breeze?
That sounds like good
radio. Which we thought was brilliant.
And you do love a jingle, don't you?
I do love a jingle. That's where it comes from. So yeah, he phoned me the next day and he said, he came in and said, "We're making some sweeping changes." And he phoned me the next day. I was a bit hungover because I always was in those days, because you have to in media. I thought that was part of the job. And he said, "Do you remember I said yesterday sweeping changes?" I said, "I do, Trevor. I'm excited for them." He said, "You won't be, because my first sweeping change, I'm getting rid of you. You and your mate are just awful."
Wow.
It's not that I don't like your show. I actually hate it. And you're gone. And I was like, "Okay, cool." And Paul Campbell was like, "Well, you can't sack him because he heads up our music sales." So that was of what I did.
You were moved.
So I was moved.
Right,
I was moved on.
Relocated. Yeah.
Relocated, yeah. My services were no longer required.
And where are you now? How old are you now at this stage?
41, I am. 41, 42.
And then how old were you when you got relocated?
I was 25.
Right. So you're still a puppy. You were just running around, just doing stuff.
And it was weird as well. So I was working at... The radio station was based in Gateshead in Newcastle. Or not Newcastle, in Gateshead in Newcastle, because the Geordies go mad for that. Yeah. 2 separate places, man. Yes. I was in Gateshead, which is right next to Newcastle, but I was working at home. I would go and record there like once every 2 weeks for a day, because we'd pre-record the shows. And then the rest of the time, I was literally cold calling 99p stores, which you can imagine how interesting that is, from home in South London,
it must have been
in a 2-bed flat, in the winter, And then that same year, my dad passed away. So then I found myself at 26 years old. I've lost like my hero. I've been sacked from this job that I really wanted. I'm now trying to I'm cold calling every day, and people didn't, making cold calls that no one wants to receive.
And what did you pause out? What did Dad do? What was his?
He was an accountant.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
And did that not ever get into your DNA?
No, luckily not. Luckily not. No,
because you definitely wouldn't be sitting here now.
Luckily
just a boring farm.
No, exactly. No, he had his own company with 3 other partners, and they had sold it. But it was really interesting with my dad, because everyone else around that accountancy practice that he owned, all the kids did very well, and they all went into finance, and they were all very numbers focused, and they were smart, and they went to grammar schools and went to uni. And my dad was like, just do what makes you happy, as long as you do the best that you can at the thing that you do. He's like,
it's cool that he allowed you to have that freedom and that endorsement to do that.
Absolutely.
That's cool.
So he had passed away. He'd been ill for like 5 years. So I'd watched him sort of get iller and iller, and I just remember having been sacked. My dad died in October. I got sacked. The previous month I'd been sacked. Oh, then the day that my dad died, I was like, I need to go out and get some fresh air and clear my head. I'm going to go for a run. Snapped my ankle, so I ended up back at A&E 12 hours later in the same hospital where my dad's just died. And I'm like, hello, I'm back again. And they're like, what is going on here? Wow. So I'm now on crutches. I've lost my dad. The job that I wanted, I haven't got.
So this is proper doom and gloom period.
Honestly, I would, and I take pride in sharing this now, because I think it's important that people know it's all right to go through that sort of a period. Every lunchtime, and I don't know what it was about lunch, because I like lunchtime. It's my favourite time of the day. I would put a soup on. I'd hobble from doing my cold calls. I'd hobble on my crutches into the kitchen of my little 2-bedroom flat. I'd turn the soup on, and I'd sit on the floor, and I'd just cry. And I would cry for 20 minutes till my soup was done. And I'd sort of go, okay. And I'd have my soup, and then I'd go back to cold calling.
Compartmentalisation of misery.
It was so weird. And my wife would come home, because she sort of went out to work at 7 o'clock and would come home at sort of 6 o'clock. And I was like a dog waiting for her at the door. I'm like, I'm so glad you're back. She's like, are you okay today? And I'm like, she went, did you do the crying over the soup thing? I'm like, yep. Done it again today. Wow. And I was like, I've just got to go and do something else. So I went and worked in other bits of radio.
This is the point, viewer, where you can see that we've got to the bottom.
We have.
And we've this is not scripted, but we've now got to the bottom, and everything you hear now on is up.
Well, it is and it isn't. It didn't get easier, it just got different.
That's hilarious.
So I just decided when I could walk again, which was about 5 months later, I said to Hayley, I've got to get out of this house. For my mental health wasn't really a thing in.
And I've met your Hayley. So you've been together a long time then.
Yeah, 2006. Wow. We've been together 19 years. Yeah,
wow. She's a trooper.
Yeah, she's really stayed the course through thick and thin. But I just decided again, I was like, look, I'm not going to get what I want out of this situation. This is another entrepreneurial lesson, I think. If you can see that the end is closed in one chapter, move again vicariously to the next thing as close to
we call it pivoting. But
fine, we'll go with pivoting. And I was like, I need to go and get a job where I'm just going to be around people. So I'm getting a little bit depressed here.
Yeah.
And I sort of was aware of my mental well-being. I was like, I don't think I feel very good at the moment. Right. I need to be around people. And I got a job then heading up the sales for a sponsorship and promotion department for a radio network. Okay. So again, I stayed as close as I could to the fire in a slightly different way. And I did that. And then, that was 2012, that must have been. And I just discovered podcasts, and I loved them. I fell in love with this whole thing, and I was like, "Oh my god, what is this?" Like,
for our viewers and listeners, that is where your expertise is now today. You have a company that just explain what the company do, and then we'll
so we help to start, grow, and monetize podcasts for brands and businesses. So we've launched 184 podcasts at this point for clients around the world. And
JB, do the stats, because they're very interesting stats. Do what you've done this on James's podcast, James Sinclair's podcast. But for our listeners, those stats are staggering, aren't they? Of how many there are and what would do that for us.
Yeah. So everyone, the perception at the moment in 2025 at the time of recording is, everyone's got a podcast, but they just don't. Ever in total, it's sort of history of podcasting, there's been 4.2 million podcasts that have ever been made ever in total. And that's from 2003. So everyone thinks this is brand new. It's not. It's been around 22 years now. But
that seems low numbers, doesn't it?
Does seem low numbers. Yeah. What's even lower is the fact that last month, only 8% of those were actively putting out content. So only 380,000 shows actually published an episode last month. So in a world where there's 400 million listeners on a monthly basis and increasing, then there's only 380,000 shows to compete with. Now, for entrepreneurs and business owners, when you look comparatively, there's 1 billion LinkedIn accounts now, there's 2 billion YouTube users, there's 3 billion Facebook users. So if you are going to compete in a particular area for the attention of an ideal customer or consumer, where would you prefer to compete? Where there's 1 billion people, 2 billion, 3 billion, or where there's only 380,000 shows that have actually been proactive? Now, obviously, of the 400 million downloads that globally happen, a big chunk of them go to the big shows.
Yeah.
You know, they go to the Joe Rogans, the Diary of a CEOs, the High Performances, the Happy Place podcast, etc. But there is thousands and thousands and thousands of people that you can connect with on a consistent basis if you make content in the right way for the right audience.
And this is you and I have spoke about it before. Is going into a specialist lane.
Yes.
You know, famous to a few. Isn't that the expression?
Yeah, yeah.
Use? And that really will get you an audience, especially if you're then what you're talking about is having the expertise to monetize what that audience might want, or training, or whatever it might be, to come up with ideas to do that. And we'll speak about that a little bit later. So on the podcast side of things, you built that company up, and I've heard this story that and you had a lot of technicians around you, didn't you? High quality technicians. And tell the listener what happened. You changed, you completely pivoted, didn't you?
Yeah. So this is the story from last year.
Yeah.
So I've been launching podcasts since 2017. I launched my first one, and the first one that I launched, there was nothing around at the time to sort of like really learn about podcasting. Like there's loads of courses and training things that you can do now, and events you can go to.
And half of them are crap, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. What a lot of people do is they launch one podcast. Like, oh, here's how you launch podcasts. Sure. Which I get the mechanic, but it's not really that something that I can sort of get behind, because I think it's a bit. I think you should have a genuine expertise if you're going to get paid for that expertise. Yeah. But I read every blog you could read. I watched every video. I consumed a podcast called How to Launch Podcast, which worked. And I launched this show off the dining room table in that same living room where I was doing my crying over soup. I evolved from the crying over soup, and I started getting on Skype and doing podcast interviews. And when I launched that show, which was the 22nd of March 2017, Tim Ferriss had the number 1 show in the country. Gary Vee had the number 3 show in the country, and I had the number 2 show in the country.
Wow!
And I was like, "Oh, that worked!" Yeah. And everyone's like, "How did you do that?" Now, truth was, I knew that something had worked. I just didn't know which bit it was. But as any good salesman or marketer knows, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. Yeah. So I was like, "Oh yeah, I've got some systems and processes." And I used all that PR background that I'd sort of like sort of amassed over a period of time, and all that sponsorship and promotion work that I'd done, and how to get brands out there and communicate core messages. I'd done that over a sort of a period of time. So people were just like, "Well, could you help me?" So I did, and then I launched another podcast which went in at number 7. Then the people who I worked on that podcast with were like, "Well, can we set up a business together?" So we did, and we ended up having a coaching company that did a best part of £1 million in 18 months. We went on this mad, exciting journey around the world doing all sorts of different stuff. But I'd always loved the podcasting. I was like, if I could spend my day doing anything, we talk about fulfillment, or what brings you ultimate happiness. Yeah. If I could spend my day doing anything, what would it be? It would be stuff like this, like having podcasts, having conversations. I just love it. I just love talking to people.
And I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I do a lot of audiobooks. They're very different styles, aren't there? There's proper production stuff, isn't there?
There really wasn't when I started. It was like two people
chats. But now it's sort of elevated, Acquired is like a proper scripted production. Business Wars. Business Wars has got a whole section of musicality to it, doesn't it? Dun, dun, dun,
fake voices and impressions.
Dropping tin cans and stuff. It's the whole thing.
Steve Jobs walked into the room.
Yeah. But it is like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, you get swooned up in it. I mean, I listen to them. They're good fun because the content of business is good about it. So what happened? You had just finish that off, because you had quite a lot of technicians. It was going in a big way.
Yeah.
But you've been around James for some time, and you've been working with him. Yeah, too long. But you absolutely changed it because it wasn't fun. Is that what I understand?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It actually wasn't. Everybody was being paid, and you were getting you weren't getting the money.
Yeah. So I'd launched some podcasts, and then went off and done this coaching thing, which was very successful. And I didn't like the people that I was working with, so I was like, let me just go back to the thing that I want to do, which is the podcast stuff. And then COVID came around, and so all of a sudden I had nothing but time on my hands. So I was like, let me just do this production thing that I've promised myself that I would do once I got to a point. I think we've all been there. Like when I get this much money in the bank, when I get to this level, then I'll do the thing that brings me the fulfillment. Whenitis.
That's it, yeah.
And then I had the opportunity, so I did it, and I remember starting it literally from the spare room. My wife was pregnant with our second child. I had my dementia-suffering mother living in our spare room, and Boris Johnson was letting us go out for an hour of walks. So I was like, I need to get busy quick because I can't exist in this house.
This is focusing your
with nothing else to do, like laser focused. So I launched the company, and I ended up getting some clients. We'd done like $7,000 in the first month and $9,000 in the second month. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. This is all right. Out the dining, out the spare room, and Hayley, who's my wife's doing my graphic design for me, and it was a nice little ecosystem. I grew the company over a couple of years, and we got to 10 staff, and we had fancy offices over in East London. And exactly as you said, it was that everyone was getting paid apart from me. And then we made again, proximity being power, which we talked about earlier. You can't be around people like, I spend a lot of time, you'll come into the studio and, you end up spending a lot of time with Jimbo, you spend a load of time with Chuds, and you just end up having these conversations of vicariously learning off people. And I was like, there's only so much time I can spend listening to brilliant people at the thing that they do and continue to ignore it.
And not do the implementation of the ideas that are being shown to you every week in, week out, week in. Yeah.
We ended up with, we were really good at podcasting, but as we were doing that, we had a client who came in and said, look, can you do us a podcast? Like, I could do you the podcast, but I'll be doing you a disservice because your brand's not right. You need better branding, you need a better website. And it wasn't an upsell, but they were like, can you do that for us? Yes, we can. Right. Just because you can doesn't mean that you should. Right. Fast forward to 9 months later, and that client equated to 50% of our revenue.
Right, dangerous.
Which you sort of go, and equated to half of my team's time. So of the 10 people that are working in the company, 5 or 6 of us pretty much full time are working on that client account. Which you go, well, that's all right. Half the money and half the time, that works until it doesn't. And we were doing all of their adverts, and we were doing their design, and we were doing their call to action marketing, and we had built them out a funnel, and we'd done their CRM system. So we had a great, which was lucky, we had a great overview of the whole business. I could see they weren't converting sales, and I knew what cash reserves they had in the bank. And I was like, if they don't start converting, we're going to have a real problem here. And I'm going to have a problem that I think they're going to go pop. So I sat down and I just felt really dissatisfied. I was like, what am I doing? Like, I've done the same thing again. I've boxed myself, and it's entirely my fault. I boxed myself into a corner. I wanted to make podcasts and spend my time doing podcasts, and now I'm doing CRM systems.
You to recognise that is a big boy's pants to be able to see that and make the change to suit. Because I meet so many clients when I'm doing some work with them, they cannot see it for the wood for the trees.
Yeah.
They're just, well, no, because they're our best client. No, because they are our best client, and they can't see that is going to be the demise of them if that goes wrong.
Yeah. Again, well, Jimbo always says, any of your clients shouldn't equate to any more than 10% of your revenue. Yeah. I've heard him say it again and again and again and again. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, Jimbo says about 10%. Jimbo says about 10%. Jimbo says about 10%. And I was like, these lot are 50%. And then I saw them not converting. I was like, this is a big problem. But the bigger point of it was, for me, I just wasn't happy. Yeah. And in a world where you're supposed to chase all this stuff, I was like, I'm just not happy. Like, I don't go to work and I'm happy. And then because of the work things not working out, I was coming home and I was having to do that thing of like parking the car in the driveway and just having a couple of minutes, be like, okay, now I'll go and play the role of dad for a couple of hours till the kids go to bed, and then I can sort of like go for a walk and try and get my head together. I was just really miserable. And that whole cash flow drain felt like a noose around my neck. And I used to keep saying it. I feel like someone's got their foot on my throat. It's a horrible place.
Not good at all.
So I sat down one morning. I was like, what am I going to do here? And I started reading this book, which we might talk about at the end, so I won't give it away. But The Miracle Morning, and it says, like, get really clear on what it is that you want. And I wrote down on a piece of paper, what the beep do you want? And I just put that as a header. And I said, right, you're not allowed to leave this table until you can answer that. Answer that question. I got really annoyed with myself. And then I just started scribbling. And when I came down to it, I was like, I don't want to run the business that I've got. And if I carry on doing it and this client goes pop, we're going to be, you know, I didn't have a big payroll at the time comparative to a lot of people, but it's like 30 grand a month. But if that client stops paying you instantly and then you've got to bankroll their money and you haven't been putting that money aside to be able to bankroll it,
you're going to suck dry.
You're going to be very quickly in trouble. So this was August. And I just basically had to make a lot of people redundant and stop.
I've been there with businesses back in the day where we've had to do this, and it's a sicky, gut-wrenching thing to do, isn't it? Come into the office, sit down, I need to tell you something.
It's the worst. It's the worst day of my career.
You know, they've got mortgages, they've got things, and the responsibility that we take on. But ultimately, you have a responsibility to your family, and it all goes round, and that's what happens.
And the client did go. They didn't go pop, but they did. They were like, "We're really sorry, we can't pay." I was like, "I didn't think you could," and they ended up. It wasn't that bad. They owed us, you know, like high 5 figures, and they were 75, 80 days late paying. But whether they were actually going to pay or not, and the only reason that they paid was because we'd done a bit more work for them, which they needed finishing. And I said to the people who were there, I said, hold fire on that. Let's send screenshots of all the work that's been done. Let's show all the back end and let's give them no access. Because they're going, can we get the logins? I was like, no, not until you paid the bill. And then I got wind, like, oh, the CEO really is, he's not a big fan of you these days. I don't care. I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to make him pay his bills. And if I give him this, he's not going to pay the bill. It's as simple as that. So we held fire, got paid eventually. But
James, at this stage, did you have an idea where you were going to go with the next chapter? Had you got that in your head?
Yeah, I got really clear over the space of a couple of days. I was like, right, what are you going to do here? Take all of the, you know, chains of reality off and say, what would you spend your time doing and who would you work with? And go and build this again, what would you do? And
did you never at this stage and the stage before with the soup tears? Good, yes. Great, that's a great title. Soup tears.
Should either be a band or a film.
There'd be a crappy band.
And now it's Soup Tears.
It's Soup Tears coming live. This stage, did you never think, I'll just go and get a job?
No.
Did you not?
No, never.
Why did you not?
Never once.
Because this is
Never
all
once.
entrepreneur weirdo stuff. Why not? Because you had a proper skill set. You could have just gone in and been a, you know.
Yeah, no, I never. And someone who's big in podcasts as well, like big, like the biggest podcast in the UK, they were making sort of like, hey, you should have a chat to this person. You should have a chat to this person. Because I'm really good pals with a lot of their teams. Like, no, I'm cool. Yeah. I'm cool. I got asked to go in-house. In fact, do you know what? I forgot about this. Somebody, I was a guest on someone's podcast, and before we started recording, he said, let's go and have a coffee around the corner. And he was telling me about what was going on with his podcast, and he was saying about what had happened with the company. I'd forgotten all about this. This is why I liked him podcast. Right. And he said, he's a proper salesman, like hardcore salesman. He said to me a month after, in fact, they were still working their notice periods. The guys were still working their notice periods. He said, come and work for me. Only run my podcast solely. We're going to LA, Dubai, and LA in the next 3 months. And he said, and I will pay you 120 grand a year. I'll pay you 10 grand a month. If you want to pay for a company, so it's still the company exists, I'll pay you 10 grand a month. But I want you to only work on my podcast. What'd you say? And straight away I went, cheers. I won't say his name. No.
Wow.
And he went, why not?
Yeah, why not?
Why not? He said, you haven't taken 120 grand home in this company in the last 3 years from what you've just told me.
So go on, why not?
I don't know. I've got an underlying belief that there's something bigger that I'm supposed to be doing. I might go back to in 3 years' time and go, can I have that job, please? but no, I've got a vision I crystallised the vision of what I'm trying to create. And I've made more moves in the last 3 months than I have in the last 3 years.
Really?
Yeah, 100%.
It's that. It's that.
Crystal clear.
Wow.
I'm having a big fight at the moment with like a megastar personality and all their team because I won't budge.
Right.
So I'm clear on what we're going to do. Well, can we just do it this way? Nope. How do we do this? Nope. Right. I'm just dead set on what I'm doing and how I'm going to do it.
You're either mental or you've really got the idea licked and done.
Only time will tell.
Yeah.
Tune in again for Soup Tears Part 2.
And this is how you do these podcasts, because you get that tension, isn't that what we're meant to have done?
Yeah, we're supposed to, In the edit, Ollie can just do like a I could do like one of those like fake.
Because JB, you're a bit of a voiceover guy as well, aren't you? Because we hear some really good, really good accents that JB does. He does this brilliant Northern Irish accent. It's like the blokes are standing in the room with us. It's unbelievable. But
it's all old school local radio tactics that no one's really doing. Because everyone's going, podcast is this new cool thing. I'm like, no, it's still communication.
He was. I know he's your idol, and he was my idol. Was Steve Wright.
Steve Wright was great.
Steve Wright was, we're talking broadcasting, entertaining on radio. I mean, Steve Wright, bless him, he did have the face for radio, but he was like such innovation.
Yeah.
He used to have his bloody trailers and everything made in America.
That's right.
And then brought over because there was cheaper studios that were doing for him. But when he used to have Gervais, the hairdresser, on, and he used to have Elvis in the building. This is a long time ago, viewers, if you are old enough to remember it. But he was, proper. This was daytime radio. I remember him doing the late afternoon show. It was like we would stop work and tune into this guy and listen to all of the segues and bites and everything that he did, and the people that he'd have on the show, and it was just really, really good stuff. And he's sadly lost, isn't he?
He is, but also again another great entrepreneurial lesson, because you listen to someone like that and go, oh, it's so natural. That was so premeditated. That show. I know a lot of people who worked with Steve, and they're like, he was the hardest worker in the room. He was there, so he used to do afternoons.
That's right.
That was a slot he did for a long time. He did all of them, across the years. But he did 2 till 5. He was in the building from 9 o'clock in the morning. Prepping that show. Every link, was premeditated. Every single thing,
even
to the minute was
even the
organised.
handovers from the other other DJs. He used to really work on them, that how it was going to be. But when you listen to it, it sounded really natural that they were just bumped into one another in the corridor, but they hadn't.
No, exactly that.
But
that's what I think sometimes it takes to something to look seamless, faultless, and effortless. It's hours, it's thousands of hours worth of prep.
Acquired the two guys, Ben and
David.
Yeah, Ben and David. A month prep for each show.
Yeah,
for the
and
big
they'll just randomly put them out as well.
And then you hear it and you think, and he goes, oh, didn't you know that? And you think, this you're lying, because we know you've read the same books on whatever they're reading, or like Costco or whatever they're doing.
But I think they do their own research separate to each other.
They do separate sides of it. One does all the numbers and the other guy does it. But it's a very good, it's proper scripted show, but it comes across as just two guys having a 4-hour chat about a very interesting company or business, and they get really into the detail, don't they? They go and interview people and stuff like that. But very good.
But they've created an amazing brand off the back of that.
So come on, get into the juice. So you've pivoted from that. You've bitten the pill and let the staff go.
Yeah.
You've now, tell us where you are. Sort of bring everybody up to speed. Who is James Burtt now, and what do you offer to the masses out there? Everything podcast. So
we still offer the whole service.
Right.
What I was chasing, I realised.
But how many employees now?
4.
4, right.
4.
So core team
of 4 people. What was interesting, so we had, as I say, 50% of our revenue was this one big client. 5 of the team were working on that one client. When it all kicked off, it was just me and one other person. I was like, who's the one person that I can keep to keep the job ticking over? We didn't lose a single client. Between me and Sam, who's my head of content, the two of us were like, I reckon we could just keep this going. I started writing all the content. I outsourced all the design to Haley, which was a 2-person job. Sam was doing all the editing. He was doing all of the client management. We tightened up all the systems. And we got to like 3 months later, I went, we ain't lost a single client.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
We have not lost a single client. If anything, and we were taking more on. And the thing that I realised is that I was chasing the wrong metric, in that there was one other big sort of podcast agency out there. And for whatever reason, I just created a fake enemy in my mind. I was like, I'm going to take this guy down.
Yeah.
How many shows does he do? 200 a month. Well, I'm going to do 201 a month. And then I was like, actually, I don't want to make 200 shows. I want to make 5 amazing shows. I want to work with top class clients. I want to work with big brands. I want to do a JV with big celebrity talent. And as soon as I got, we worked with a lot of experts, coaches, consultants. We'd done some really cool stuff. We'd created some brands off the back of podcasts, but we hadn't ever had like a big sort of big ticket client that was like a household name brand.
Yeah.
Got clear on what I wanted. 6 weeks later, the global lead from Ted Baker phoned. He was like, can you do a podcast for us? And I was like, isn't the universe an interesting thing when you get absolute clarity? And we had all the time to do it because we had reduced the cost down. We'd reduced all the other shows that we're working on. I had, oh my God, you've done it again. Great questions. Maybe lead on to another thing. I had somebody who's starting a car company who reached out to me because of my sort of like branding and sort of PR background. He's like, would you want to come and run socials for us on this new car company? I said, no, it's not for me. And he was like, oh, I wasn't expecting you to say that. I want to bring you, can I bring you as like a head of brand? I was like, no, not for me. Half an hour later, somebody phoned up who's a sort of big TV celebrity and said, I've been passed on your name by a mutual friend of ours. I'm looking for someone to launch a podcast with. Can we have a conversation? And 6 days later, we agreed to JV to produce that show for them as well.
Wow.
So the two models we're going after is less clients, higher ticket price point, and a JV model with well-known talent. Because the thing that is really popping with a lot of bigger shows now is people who've got a big following, they're video first, so they're focused on getting great video content as the primary focus of that show, like this sort of a setup. But they've got a big marketplace to go and push this content to, and or they're already doing big brand deals.
My nephew Samuel, he works as a producer, TV producer, and he produces Jimmy Carr, a lot of comedians. He's in that comedian sort of sector.
Yeah.
And the Big Fat Quiz. Anyway, but he'll do like 3 months' work, then you got 2 months off.
Yeah.
And when they've had this off time before they know that the next show's coming up, and the demise of viewing of TV, that he's saying that it is really, the writing is on the wall. I mean, it just is, because what you see on viewers that we get on YouTube is unbelievable. He is now doing a podcast with comedians. They're just coming in and telling them what they're eating.
Yeah.
They're coming in and telling them we're going to ask 4 questions. It's the same 4 questions. But because of his contacts, he's been able to get big names coming.
Yeah.
They're doing it for nothing.
Yeah.
Don't have to pay anybody. They're just coming in to get the exposure and to understand podcasting. And he said the production of it is just very simple compared to what they're doing. And the cost of the technicians, the cost of the cameras, the cost of everything is way, way down.
Yeah.
And the viewership with good names and good content is really going through the roof.
Yeah.
And he can see himself. I was with him the other week, and he said, I can see myself, Uncle, coming right out of TV altogether.
A lot of people are. They're going into podcasting.
That is just a mega shift, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Because the thing that's shifted, I guess, in the last definitely 5 years is on demand. Like, who's waiting for a TV show to start at a certain time, other than live sport, which you can still see that's dominant, and that's why Netflix are doing things like trying to get the big like the Christmas Day NFL games. That's why they're now doing things like WWE and all that kind of stuff, and that's why Prime is buying Champions League, because the only thing that is I will turn up to view that thing at that time is live sport. Everything else is being watched on demand.
Because who's just taken? It's Jimmy Carr again. It's brought to mind the last one laughing. Is it called?
My God! Have you watched it?
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. That's Amazon Prime.
So Amazon Prime. I mean, Sam was telling me about this, but it's like multi-million-pound contract.
Oh, you can see that, yeah.
And there's a guy sitting in his pants somewhere in Norway that came up with the
concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's gone to like 32 countries.
The value is in IP, and that's the other great thing now. So this, I wrote a blog in like 2021. I was like, why is Peter Crouch still working with the BBC? He can make more money if he did it himself.
Really?
And I've got mates who are very, very close to Crouchy and his team, and he read that blog. Okay. Now, he didn't do it because he read the blog, but someone retrospectively like, some kid.
But he's not put it online that it was you.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, come on, Crouchy.
Yeah, come on, do us a favour, Crouchy. But he's absolutely killing it. Him and his wife, they do the therapy Crouch together. Yeah. She's got an offshoot. Abby's got an offshoot called Exhibit A. I know her brother and her cousin, who are the main producers of it. The company's doing so well off the back of it because they now own the intellectual property and they've got all the clout and all the power. Back in the day, it was the mainstream media channels that owned you. Like 8 out of 10 cats, that format. Jimmy Carr can never take that format. But he could do the Jimmy Carr podcast, and he owns all of that intellectual property. Yeah, he's going to have management and all that kind of stuff. But really,
because these guys, I used to follow Gas Monkey.
Gas Monkey,
yeah,
okay.
Gas Monkey. A lot of you will know Gas Monkey. JB's living in a cave, but Gas Monkey was all about custom cars. I was all into custom cars, and he used to build these hot rods and stuff like that. And he was on Discovery Channel,
Right.
and they owned him. And
Yeah,
they
yeah.
owned all that content, and he was getting £2.50, and they were getting the rest of the pound.
Yeah.
And in the end, he had to fall out with them. You know, this is 10 years on this thing. He's got mega worldwide viewing for it.
Yeah.
And in the end, he just had to fall out with them, go to court, pay him a ton of money, and then start his YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And the rest is history, because all of the viewership came across to his new channel, and he owns 100% of it. And you know, it's just a curve of learning for what they're doing. And you know, these big boys, I mean, they really do. I think, Joey, they're getting hit in the teeth because it's so easy to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Through this media.
Yeah.
That I do not watch TV.
No.
At all. Even for news now, I just go straight onto YouTube, press Sky. Sky comes up.
Yeah.
And it's there. Live Sky is on YouTube.
Yeah.
Watch that, find out who's killed anybody, what Trump has given and what's going on, and then go off to work. And the rest of the time, I just go on YouTube, ask it exactly the thing I want to dive into, and off I go. And as a dyslexic non-reader, it's heaven.
Yeah, of
you want to
course.
learn how to use your Ray-Ban, those glasses that James and I bought. I just went, right, well, I can't read the instructions in the box. Just go on YouTube, watch 3 videos of some very nerdy people. Now I know exactly what
Yeah.
I'm doing. It's done. It's very good.
You mentioned there The Rest Is History. I know it wasn't in that context, but there's actually a very popular show called The Rest Is History, which is owned by a company called Goalhanger, which is actually owned by Gary Lineker. And he owns The Rest Is History, The Rest Is Football, The Rest Is Politics, The Rest Is Entertainment. They've come up with an entire brand.
And is this what he's coming out? He's now off the telly now, is he?
Yeah, so this was interesting. So Goalhanger was originally a production company doing sport documentaries.
Right, okay.
So the way that the BBC works is that they'll put stuff out to tender. So a certain amount of stuff gets made in-house, and the rest of it they basically outsource. So you can tender for the work. So Gary Lineker can get paid, I don't know, £1.5 million a year to be a presenter, but also his company could go, hey, we've got a need as a government supported or a publicly funded organisation. We need to have 50 hours of high quality production on, grassroots football. So he can then go and make that documentary, and that's what Goalhanger was there to do. And they did some documentaries and stuff around. I think South Africa when the World Cup was there a few years ago. Blah blah blah. Anyway, he's then launched this podcast, The Rest Is History, or The Rest Is Politics, or The Rest Is History was the first one. Took off like a rocket, and they announced a month ago that Goalhanger will not be doing any more TV production. They've got rid of that entire department. They are only going after podcasts. They're now solely a podcast company.
Wow.
So that shows you where the marketplace is going.
But I think that us as digestion, we're moving at high speed. We're busy lives. Well, we want to listen to what we want to listen to when we want to listen to it, and that whole thing of having to go to that time slot and that timing back in home, it's just changed. I mean, you sit in our living room. I've got one on the iPad, me on the YouTube, and someone else in the kitchen cooking with a phone in the hand. That's the world we live in, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, here, even at our industrial estate over the other side here, Joby, I'll go in there, lunchtime, everybody's got a phone in their hand.
Yeah.
Watching some YouTube, listening to a podcast or whatever it is. It is the new sort of digestion for entertainment, isn't it?
Well, you look at, if you've gone to a train station recently where you used to have everyone was on the platform reading a newspaper. Every single I went there the other day, and I thought it was just really interesting. I actually took like a little slide photo. There was 16 people stood on the platform. Every single person was on their mobile phone, apart from a little old lady who was just sat there and just waiting, just watching the world go by. I was like, interesting. I took the photo. I was like, I'm just going to sit next to the little old lady and just see, like, what's she looking at?
Did you feel like Chuds, the sort of secret photographer?
Yeah. I tried to get like a down movement and
Chuds is
a long shadow.
Is James Sinclair's videographer. He has a whole other world, isn't he?
Alter ego.
He's just
100,000 subscriers on his YouTube channel.
It's just incredible.
He's so talented,
isn't he?
But again, that goes to show, someone like a Chuds, for example, he's built his own brand.
Yeah.
If he didn't want to work for Jimbo anymore, like his photography stuff probably pays him more than a salary pays him.
Yeah.
He just loves working with Jim.
Yeah.
And he loves the content that they're making. He really loves it and has a whole enjoyment of that. But if he wanted to, he's built this, because this is another thing as well from sort of content creation perspective. It's not this or that. It's not like you either have your job or you have a podcast these days. Like, do them both and grow them simultaneously. We're working with a guy at the moment who's BBC One presenter. It does a load of their sort of craft shows and all that sort of stuff. Very, very high-end woodwork. He'd love all this. And he wants to launch a podcast because he's already got the awareness of all the BBC stuff. But he wants the editorial control to have the conversations that he wants to have. So he runs a company, and he's a TV presenter, and he's going to be a podcaster. So he's got all of that attention.
That kind of neatly brings us back to why we've got you in the building. We can use, why are we here? Why am I doing these podcasts?
I don't know, just because I think you're that new beard thing you've got going on, you're so handsome, you want people to see it on YouTube, you think you're a bit of a face. I mean, it's working for you.
You booked him to come.
It's working for you, isn't it?
We're gently getting consultancy customers from our Instagram, so we just put it out.
Is that where they're coming from?
We don't say come and be consulted by me. Yes, me.
You should try that though.
Yeah, we should try that. Yeah. Ping, ping, ping.
Yeah. But is that where they're coming from though? So from
my
Instagram?
daughter does it. Obviously, Oliver's helping her with some bits and clips and stuff. But that comes in. I can only do so many that I can get through in a month. I only do about 6 people a month, and I pick and choose who I want to work with. But that just comes in. It's very good. We're obviously mentioning our other businesses that we run, the wedding business and our industrial estates and stuff. That brings in a few new faces to see what we do. But what is the monetization of why we're doing the podcast and stuff? I genuinely, at my old age, want to give something back to having a conversation for entrepreneurs to get there quicker with less scars in their back, is my favourite saying, that we give them tricks and flicks that they can move forward. But the interesting thing talking to you today is how you have managed to pivot and change to where you are now, being like that you are considered, and whether you say it or not, I know you are because I speak to other people, to being probably one of the leading knowledge, because of all the scars that you've got in the podcast world, because no one's actually focused on just that. And that's what you've done. You've just gone in that lane, and you've kind of stayed in it the last few years, and that's now, obviously you explained, giving you dividends back. We're making this. Why? I think I want to build up a personal brand. I think I want to do just to steal some of the ideas that James Sinclair is doing, that I will be a warmer product for bankers to lend me money to go and do other projects, for people to come and work for us. All of those good things that we know that we talk about with other podcasters. But I think it's very important. It makes me a lot easier to people to deal with me, because they can go and see me, and then when they come and meet me or work with me or contact me, they kind of know who they're meeting. Because we try and do it in such a genuine way. This is what you get. This is not a performance. This is me. And is that what you're doing? I mean, you're doing other things. You're doing where people are doing training schemes and stuff, aren't you? Explain that a bit more.
Yeah, so we've got clients who do it for a bunch of different reasons. I would say that the number one thing to be doing a podcast for is to build that brand, to humanise that brand. We're about to do a big sort of mid-level accountancy practice there, about 30 million quid turnover, 300 people. Got amazing marketing, great branding. It looks as it should, big media accountancy brand. There's no personality there. It looks very polished and looks really nice, but they've quite rightly said, a lot of our senior partners are going to be, going soon, or they'll, become chairman roles instead of sort of actively in the business. We need to show some of the younger talent that's coming through, and how do we do that? And a podcast is a great way of personalising the brand. I think if you're the operator of the business, or you're the head of the business, like you are, to build a personal brand. I always think of a personal brand as like a director's loan. Like if you build that personal brand on Instagram or through your podcast, whatever, you can loan that to whatever. You can put attention on Baddo Parkhouse. You can put your attention on the industrial sites. You can put the attention on the consultancy gigs. So that's another great reason to do it. And you've exactly said it. Our mutual friend Will, I've launched 2 of his podcasts for him, and I remember saying to him, because I needed a sort of like a testimonial for a website. So can you just tell me, like, what's the number one sort of benefit you've had from doing a podcast? You know what Will's like. I only needed one clip, and he sent me like 14 different. Use whichever variant.
This look, and this look.
But he said the best thing for him.
This is Will Polston, by the way. He's a very good friend of ours, and we do love him.
Yeah, we do. But he said the number one thing that he didn't expect from the podcast was that he was getting warm traffic for his highest paying options of his coaching services, and he said it was really interesting. He said, because I see it as cold traffic, but they're cold to me because I don't know about them, but I'm warm to them because they've seen that content. They build up. There's
and people need to go and look at the content to get the confidence to sometimes make the phone call or do the tweet,
like and trust, isn't it? People will not buy from you until they buy into you, and one of the quickest ways to do that is that content piece. And
Ollie, you've got a task going on here, because we've given you the role of Baddow Park, where you're doing a podcast. This is the problem that we had with Baddow Park, and that's why Ollie was around us, say, 18 months, 2 years ago, and doing some subcontracting work, and we sort of, what is it called? The
Dove from Above.
Dove from Above. And we brought you
Bob
in.
Mortimer,
Bob
absolutely.
If you've not seen that, go and see it. What was the show called?
Shooting Stars.
Shooting Stars. Go and see Shooting Stars. If you're a younger person.
I don't think it aged well.
Wasn't PC right, was it?
No, it was not.
There was a lot of this going on,
Yeah, it definitely was.
But Ollie's been given the job, but at the wedding venue, how do we show our pastoral care and attention to everyday weddings that we do here? How can we emulate that early of someone coming in to know that they were going to get that and sign up for us looking after them? So it's got to be content.
Yeah,
and we're doing the frequently asked questions.
Yeah.
The most frequently asked questions of weddings. What do you do in a winter wedding? How does a sunny wedding work? How does bad weather at a wedding? How's a budget wedding work? What does a wedding with grumpy parents that don't like one another that come into? And my team have done hundreds and hundreds of experienced weddings.
Yeah.
They know all the answers, but we need to build up their personalities, don't we? We need to find that people can like and trust them. They will deep dive every piece of content before they come to us.
Of course.
I walk in the door and people go, "Oh, I know you. You're the owner man, aren't you?" And I go, "Oh yeah, hello there, nice to meet you." They'll go and they'll just put in Baddow Park and everything comes up.
Yeah.
They'll digest everything. I mean, it's a bit like me with my camper van. I've seen all the YouTube videos. I know how to get the jack out, how to turn the thing on, what happens when the door stops working, this, that, and the other. You just deep dive, because that's the sort of nerdy thing that we do. Especially when people are buying a wedding at £30,000 plus.
It's the biggest day of their life as well, isn't it? It's the most important day of their life.
That they need it to be safe and secure, so that they do that dive. And so, come on, you come in here. How's it going?
Yeah, it's
They were
going
a bit wooden to start with, because I came in on one of the shoots.
Yeah, I think that's the question I'd like to ask you, James, to be fair. Like, working with different businesses, like obviously Kelly and Gaynor, they aren't presenters. They've got this wealth of knowledge and they've really taken it in their stride. But what would you do going to, I don't know, a business where someone hasn't got any presenting experience? What would you do to sort of coach them to get into presenting?
I think fundamentally they don't need to present. It depends on the content format that you've got. So I've met your team here because
don't put them in a presenting situation.
Yeah, don't make it feel like it's presenting. Make it comfortable, and because you've got a relatively small setup here, which is really nice. So you can forget that the cameras are there. The first couple of times, like, it will be really wooden, it will be really stiff. The magic for a podcast happens in the 5 minutes before you hit the record button. How comfortable you can make the host or the co-host or the guest, that will dictate how good the content will be. But I'd be saying to them, look, this is not podcast. Don't see this as presenting. This is not Radio 2. This is not TV. We can stop and start if there's a problem. By the way, it would probably be me dropping something on the floor of the reason we have to stop and start again. Yeah. Just have the conversation amongst the two of you and just get them to, you don't have to go, hello and welcome to the Baddow Park House podcast presented by me, Gaynor, and me, the other non-Gaynor.
Because they've gone SWIP, haven't they?
Yeah,
they've already gone.
You just
they?
Straight away, you sit up. Your posture's different. It's like I think that's the reason why people love the podcast that I do with Jimbo. It just sounds like two mates messing about who just one of them happens to be one of the best business operators in the country, and the other one's all right with a jingle. Like, we have ish.
If you can remember what buttons to press.
Yeah, exactly. I nearly forgot again today. Yeah. But so make them comfortable. That's the key thing, because it doesn't have to be a format where it feels like it's an interview. So I would say that is the one sort of the key thing. Before you ever hit a record button, though, the number one piece of advice is: what does podcast success look like? What does this show need to do? And how can you curate and create a content format that makes that possible? So, for example, what we really want is to understand the personality of the team behind Baddow Park House. What we really want to know is that they've done 400 of these experiential weddings. What we want to know is that actually we have had a situation where grandma's had a trip and a fall. We've had to get an ambulance out, but no one on the dance floor knew. And we moved her into this room. I remember you telling me that where we had the beautiful party. Yeah. Like, this is normally the room where we put the older relatives. Yeah. So we've got a bit of quiet time. We bring them a cup of tea and we bring them a cup of coffee and we have a little chat and someone's in there looking after them. They need to understand that kind of stuff because that's what's going to build up that know, like, and trust. Because really, when people are making a very, very high-end, high-ticket purchase that is so heart-led as well, they need confidence that you're going to build that the experience that they want. And the only way you get that is from know, like, and trust. And sometimes they just have to hang out with you for a bit. You will guarantee in the next 18 months there will be people that come in and go, I've watched every episode of that podcast. Where's that bit on the podcast where you said, like, if we do the outdoor wedding and it rains, where do we go to? You'll start getting all of that.
And so that you probably had 4 or 5 weeks with them, 6 weeks with them.
Yeah, a couple of months now.
So how is that going? I mean, and have you changing the format to get them more conversationable?
Yeah,
for a better word.
The issue is we've been making it is sort of a podcast format, but it's more for YouTube. So I've been trying to get them to do the whole "Hello, welcome to today's video." In today's video, we're going to be talking about this, which they don't like doing. And as well, like, I'm sort of feeding them information to where I want to sort of steer the conversation. But what we're going to do the next time we do one is I'm going to make cue cards and I'm just going to let them do it rather than it being me and sort of making it feel sort of, I don't know, sort
orchestrated.
Of more, more staged.
Yeah, nice.
So yeah, I mean, it's about, and it's the same for what we're doing for this podcast. It's just sort of trial and error, seeing what works and continuously tweaking.
And our thing, JB, we we've done the big leap. We've bought all this equipment. I've been fully employed Oliver to come in. We're just going to make them and make them and make them and make them and trip up and fall and get up and trip up and fall. And, go into your 10,000 hours of help, look at other people, swipe and deploy stuff until we get it exactly what we think we can get it cruising. And I think a lot of people excuse us, well, we did one, we didn't really like it when we watched it back, so that's that all over. Not liking it is good. Yeah, because it means you're tweaking it and you're critiquing it and you're doing stuff. I remember doing that very first Instagram that you do is hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
It's a tree. Yeah, it's a tree. It's JB sends me pictures of trees and says, "What tree is this, Uncle Jamie?" And I go, "Okay."
My kids want to know now. I was like, Louis went, "Oh, I like that one." I said, "I'll ask James Martin. Don't worry, we'll find out what that one is." But the key, also, the great thing with podcasts is slightly different in video land, I think. But with podcasting, people like to see an evolution. Right. If you come out all guns blazing and it's perfect and it looks amazing, brilliant. Okay, cool. But then we've got not nowhere to go, but you've set a level of expectation. Whereas if you watch
Matt, he's a good example. Matt Armstrong. He's so natural. He's got his dad involved. He's got his mates involved. He tells this great story of buying this crashed Rolls Royce that some famous footballer owned, and they do it all up. But you can see the progression. What you said, I've enjoyed the progression.
Yeah,
because he's off his knees. They've now got a little workshop. They've now got a bigger workshop. He bought his forever house. Then he got rid of that and bought another great big house because he's so successful, and they're doing sponsors and all the rest of it.
The Garage Style boys who come to the dinner, they did his garage.
They did his
garage. His warehouse, didn't they?
And it's just you watch that, and I do think this polished product would be, well, A, it would be very expensive to do it, and B, would it ever work? But I watch a couple of guys from America. I watch a guy that just does his farm. He just does stuff around his farm, and I just check in with him every Sunday when he drops his little video, and I just sit there and watch the world go by in America, him working on the farm. It's just goofy, I know.
But also, like with your one, I would say that if they're uncomfortable with the beginning and the end bit, just do that once, and then you could just chop that in. So then you can just get them to start talking about. I would try and start them having that conversation. Hit the record button, but don't let them know that you've started. So this is what we're going to talk about today. What we'd love to talk about is like what happens if the wedding party, as a falling out, the two sides of the family don't like each other. Oh God, do you remember that wedding? Yeah, blah blah blah. Okay, cool. We're already rolling, so let's carry on that conversation. Just get them into that, and then you can splice. We do it with Jimbo's podcast. There's an advert, I think, in the middle. There's something about like come and watch the live show.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Leicester Square.
Yeah, we're pausing out for a minute. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, so you just jump. You can do jump cuts to that stuff instead, and then just make it more conversational, because people don't like watching themselves back, and they don't like hearing themselves back, because you hear yourself through a different part of your ear, which is why you sound weird. You'll watch yourself in the mirror image that you normally have, so that's why you think that you look weird. But when they get comfortable with it, or when they have the first, and again, I think the other thing to remind people of is, look, we're not trying to make you Zoe Ball on Radio 2. We just want people who are undecided to just feel a bit more confident about the thing that they do. And the great thing with the content that you're making is, from an evergreen SEO perspective, that video on how to avert a winter wedding disaster by having a plan B, that will work for you as well in 5-10 years time as it's going to work for you in the short term.
I watch stuff. It could be 8 years old. But it's still there, and it's still rolling out, and it's still giving the same information, but it's a new viewer that's had to come and find it, and you're doing it again. I mean, there's so much else to learn. I mean, your podcast, but the YouTube whole thing, I'll speak to Chuds. You know, the how you set it up and put it on. They're doing like 3 thumbnails. Then they're seeing what one goes where and what one works. Then they pick one out, and it's like creating tension. Is it just a boring conversation? Will the entrepreneur die? You know. We've been watching Kevin McLeod for, I don't know, 15 years doing them houses up. It's the same story.
You know it's going to come all right in the end.
Have they got enough money? Are they going to have a baby? Does it really look good? Do I really like this house? Well, I'm back here again after 14 years and they've not finished it.
I hate those ones. But also from the perspective of what you guys are doing, is it's not just about that organic audience that accidentally finds it. It's like if a lead or an inquiry comes through, hey, we've got this amount of budget, we're looking for an October wedding. Oh, brilliant! We've done an episode of a podcast about that. Look this up. Go and check out that.
They have tools in their toolbox, don't
exactly.
they? And that's what's key. And they can say, actually, we can show you what the ceremony looks like because we did a podcast about it, or we did a YouTube video about it. Boom. Yeah. And then off they go, and they're going, oh, this is very good.
Yeah.
You know, this is
no like good. And trust, looks professional.
But even Ollie, when you come to a lot of our meetings now, when we do the goes, you know, we talk about when people do contracts and stuff like that, and they're saying, so this is the end of the viewing, so here's the paperwork, and they're sliding across with a pen and a piece of paper. All of this stuff, it's here. You're a consultant. You're leaning back. You're not leaning in. You're leaning back to give people confidence that what they're seeing is real. And I think people smell, and I know I do, bullshit from a million miles away, your perception. And that's why we work really hard. I'm going off a piece of it, but we look after, JB, a quarter of a mile that way and that way of the highway. We don't own it. We cut the grass, we trim the trees, both sides of our entrance, because we want people, the first impression is it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And people make their mind up in a minuscule. There's a great book.
Before they've even got to the venue, isn't it?
The book's called The Blink, and it's by Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah.
And he talks about people make their mind up like within milliseconds of meeting you or whatever it is. We have to have a formula of stripy lawns and nice entranceway. But it's all about what they see is real and it's genuine and it's going to make things. Well, I think that's also true about what people do on podcasts, is what people do on YouTube videos and everything. People smell rubbish quickly and they just do.
And I think it's only going to get more people searching for that authenticity, because again, like in our generation, I'll put me and you in the same camp here, you turned up to the TV at a certain time to watch a certain program and that was it. Yeah. Nowadays, I don't know how old your kids are, I think you've got a range of ages, but they're more interested to watch other people play games than playing the flipping game. I'm like, I can't get my head around it, but that's because I'm too old to get my head around it.
Get the format of Gogglebox. Who thought that would ever work?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a viewer of Gogglebox. Yeah. I think it's really good. But when they pitched that, the guy must have gone, yeah, thanks very much. Next.
Yeah.
You know, Jesus. We're going to watch people watching
TV.
Yeah, that isn't
that is the generation that we live in now. People are searching and seeking for authenticity. So, and that's the main red flag. You know, the number one thing, make people comfortable before you hit the red button and understand what it is that you're actually doing this podcast for. So the other advice, the way to make sure a podcast fails is to make people feel uncomfortable, make them try and be something that they're not.
Yeah, in a performance
mode. If they're not a performer, play to people's strengths. Because I've met the two ladies that you're talking about, and they're warm and caring, and they've got such a deep level of expertise. However, by hook or by crook, come up with a content format that delivers on that. That's kind of the job that you've got. And if that means that it's not like, hello, welcome to Ballow Park House, then find a different way to make it work. Just the great thing is that you're willing to test and measure and tweak and pivot and change, and you're not looking looking for perfection from day one. So that's a good place to be.
And the real thing is we need them to be the genuine article, because, I was going to go out there and say, hello, I am the owner of Barrow Park. Welcome. It's a sunny day. Now we're going into the drawing room. No, and obviously that was just a joke. But they're doing well. I think they're doing well. We wanted to do a feature, because you do hundreds of features.
Yeah, I love a feature.
Love a feature.
Love a feature.
So what are we doing, Ollie?
Our feature this week is, what are we reading?
Are you doing that in performance mode? Are you
He
just
was.
telling us what it was?
He
Our
was.
feature this week is
Sounded
welcome.
like a voiceover.
Go on, tell us again.
So it's, what are we reading?
What do we read? Well, I don't read anything because I'm so dyslexic.
I was about to say, great feature for a dyslexic dude.
Feature. Welcome to
Brilliant.
our Dyslexic What Are You Reading podcast.
Dyslexic James is talking about books, everyone. Great content.
What are you listening or listening to or reading? What are you doing?
In terms of reading, Miracle Morning.
Miracle
I
Morning.
genuinely
Yes, I've heard you speak about
cite
Miracle Morning.
that
Yeah.
book as changing my life, because it was
You told me it was Hayley.
What changed my life?
Yeah.
But I didn't say whether it was a good or a bad thing, did I? Ask more specific questions, James Martin. The Miracle Morning. You know, when that whole analogy of when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Well, I think when the reader was ready, the book appeared. Because I'd heard about the Miracle Morning for years and years and years, and for whatever reason, I just picked it up, and that was the catalyst to me going, "What the f do I actually want?" and writing that whole thing down. That book was it.
But it's quite a format to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a whole
It's a whole thing,
of
yeah.
things that you do.
Yeah, so
Go on,
it's
explain that a bit
structured
more.
into. It's called savers. So it's there's a whole sort of rationale around why it's operated in this way. But the saver stands for silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing or journaling, because they had to make it work. So the silence thing, some form of meditative practice, and I just, with the book, I was like, I'm just going to do what it says to do.
And do you do this every morning?
Every morning.
Where are the children when this silence is happening?
So I used to get up so early that they were asleep.
Okay.
And now I was like, do you know what? I want them to see me doing it. So they get up and I do it in the living room. They sit on the sofa. So we've got sort of like a corner sofa, and I sit behind the sofa. And I said, Daddy's going to do his Miracle Morning. And they go, have you done your Miracle Morning yet? They come downstairs
cool.
in
That's
their
very
little
cool.
blankets.
Yeah.
And if I'm in the middle of it, they just come and have a sit and have a cuddle.
Right.
And they'll put the telly on or have their breakfast or whatever. Sometimes I have to break up my Miracle Morning to deliver some form of chocolate cereal. Great fathering.
sugar.
Great fathering. They wonder why they're not being quiet. But yeah, I do it every single morning. So it's savers. So I do like a breath work practice, then the affirmation. So I literally write them down on my notes in my phone. I then have a reminder to look at it again.
And your consistency on this has been how long?
So I've done it every day since August.
Wow.
Every day since August. So here you go. There's my affirmations for today. So you can see I'm doing it on the 8th. Today I will take steps towards my personal greatness and being the best version of myself that I could be. Blah, blah, blah. I write this sort of stuff every day. I then have a reminder that goes off at midday to check in. So I can go, am I living in alignment with what I set out my mission to be?
This consistency of a set process, it does give you somewhere to go every morning to focus down before that day starts. Because we could just roll out of bed and blah, 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 off it goes again.
Yeah, that's what I used to do.
I don't do that, Jabby. And I'll take my hat to you, because that is really, really strict for yourself to do that. I have a set process of going to sleep, where I do all the ablutions normally, this, that and the other. I don't sleep much. I go to bed usually about midnight, but I clean the whiteboard. Have I said this to you before?
I think so.
So the clean the whiteboard is you have the whole day in scribbles and colours on a whiteboard, just like that. And I just, in my mind, get a rubber, clean all the edges, clean the middle out of that, put the dirty rubber down, pick up a clean cloth, clean the whole board all the way round, do that. Very, very neat and tidy. Look at that. Then close my eyes tight till you get those little flashy stars. Pick one and make it disappear into the future, into the distance for nowhere, and then go to sleep.
That's good.
And
I like that.
Every night I do that, and I've done that every night for the last 10 or 15 years. It works, and I go to sleep. I don't worry about any of the work.
You can see it in your mind's eye as well.
And it just closes the day down.
Yeah.
And in the morning, I always get up, cup of tea, go outside, any weather, pouring rain, sunshine, lovely. I just talk to the sky like a complete nutter. Lucky I've got a big enough front garden that I can interfere with my work. And I'll have it today on me. I always have it, and I have several of these all over the place.
Should you go outside and talk to the sky? Walk me through that.
Right. I have that little pebble there. I have that in my pocket, and that's my gratification stone. And I really panic if I haven't got that in my pocket. And I have this one and a couple of others in where I live down in France as well, if I haven't taken that. And it just gives me, when I go for stuff in my pocket, it just gives me a reminder of being grateful for where we are. I then talk to the sky. I'm not religious.
That.
I'm very much into the energy of the universe, and the universe energy doesn't ever die. It just moves around and goes to different places. So without getting too woo-woo, I use that as my little consultancy buddy in life, and I ask him to help me through the next month if I think there's something busy going on. I thank him for the stuff that's happened from the previous week, and I have a sense of levelling by doing that to myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
or am I just going off piece?
No, I get it.
But what you're doing is very structured, isn't it? And it's orchestrated.
It's horses for courses, though, isn't it? Because you're someone, maybe because of your dyslexic brain, like you just need something that brings you back to centre, which is this stone.
Yeah.
You've still got a process. But I am someone, like, I love a to-do list. I love it to do. I like stuff being laid out and going through the steps. Like when we launch a podcast, there's 68 steps we take a client through to launch their podcast from start to finish.
This is what I was going to ask you. You said that you'd launched a couple of podcasts for Will Polson. Can you explain, what does it mean when you launch a podcast? Because do you just do the first one or two, or what does that mean?
So we always launch with 3 shows. Right. So we launch a pilot show and 2 full episodes, because this was the thing that I sort of cobbled together on my first time I had ever done a show. I sort of read all the blogs and I listened to all the podcasts, and I was like, oh, it needs to hit the ground running. So I used what I'd learned in PR, and I was like, well, there needs to be stuff for people to consume if they want to consume it.
Right.
So let's set up the tone of what the show is going to be all about. So the pilot show, and I'll walk you guys through it before you launch yours or the Paddock Park one.
Introduction?
Yeah, so this intentionally short, so it's between 3 and 5 minutes in length, and it's basically who you are, what's your credibility to sort of be talking about the thing that you're talking about, what form of education, information and entertainment you're going to give people, why you're excited to launch it. If you've already got episodes, you can then chuck some clips in there. Here's some guests we've got coming up that you can listen to shortly. Chuck some clips in, and then why you're excited to launch it, and then encourage them to go and hit the follow or the subscribe button. So that's what that first show does. And then we
really
put out
what he's talking about.
184 of these I've done, baby. And it's just testing and measuring stuff.
Of launches?
I've launched 184 shows.
I was going to say, that wasn't shows you've been in. Crikey, how many have you done today?
Done 5 today.
You've done 5 today already?
Today, yeah.
That you've actually been a host, haven't you? You've been hosting them with James.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so then you do that, the pilot show, and then the first 2 full episodes. And again, if there's a multi-format content type, so for example, if one's going to be, if you're going to do interviews is one style, and then there's also going to be solo shows about you sharing
information.
If you're looking to launch an industrial site business, here's the 5 key things you need to think.
Yeah.
I would be launching with one of each of those, because some people will resonate with the interview stuff and some people will resonate with the solo format.
Right.
So you do the pilot show and the first 2 full episodes. And that's how you launch the show. But also within the launch, you've got the artwork, the theme music. They're putting it up onto Apple and Spotify, setting up the back end of what they call the RSS feed, making sure it ranks for keywords. There's a lot of stuff to it, but primarily it's still the same system and process that I did on the 22nd of May 2017 off the dining room table. It worked then, and it still works now, luckily.
So when I said earlier in this podcast that we're just going to keep making them until we get it right, you could shortcut that for us then, couldn't you?
Yeah, a little bit.
But this means I've got to give you loads of money.
Yeah, it's going to be expensive, mate. No, but again, but with a lot of the content, it's a lot of the process that we go for as an agency is getting people to making good content like that. But you guys have already got, so you just need like the structure of day one and a bit of the promo stuff. I'll tell you all that.
And what happens commonly? What happens? Do they just run out of puff? Do they run out of guests? How many of them stay in?
There used to be a horrible stat that something like 90% of podcasts never get beyond episode 7.
Wow. Okay.
Pod fade, they call it, because you get all the excitement of the launch of it, and then by episode 7, you're in sort of like month 2. And, all of your friends and family have stopped supporting this podcast. I get it now, like everyone who's like, oh, he's launching a podcast. Well, there's another episode, like, couldn't care less, mate, whatever. You don't get that support. But that's why it normally fades out. I mean, we've got clients we've been working with for 3.5 years, and they've been doing it every single week for 3.5 years. Look at Jimbo. I launched Jimbo's podcast for him in 2019. He's been doing it for, 5-6 years now.
And he's got some numbers now, isn't he? What's his numbers?
Yeah, he's doing 100,000 downloads a month, if not more. I mean, we had a show last week that done 10,000 downloads.
That's a lot of eyeballs.
It is, yeah.
Wow.
And you can see the effect of it. You know, he's getting lots of leads. He's getting lots of inquiries. He's getting, you know, lots of people know about it. I'm getting, you know, inquiries all the time. I'm getting people adding me every single day.
Yeah, it's good.
I'm getting rinsed for the jokes that he tells about my Instagram handle.
What is your Instagram handle?
James Burtt Official. I don't even get why that's so funny. I'm just officially James Burtt.
If that's what you need in your life to say that last bit that you obviously do, it's your insecurity, love, isn't it? That's what it is.
It is, yeah. It's my identity statement. I'm official. I'm validating myself.
So he rinses you on that and just your clothes sense, isn't it?
Yeah. So is what it is.
Yeah. And it's you now. The funniest thing of that whole thing now, James, is that you think that's really boring.
Yeah. But
that's the funny bit you really.
But people love it.
Don't
I get people on LinkedIn like, oh, here comes James Burtt Official. I'm like, we're not even on the same platform that we're talking about here. Yeah. But it does work.
But you kind of are going to get that with that many viewers because it's getting good viewers, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's the future? Let's wind up here. How do you see the future of podcasts and what do you think's going to happen leading up to the next sort of few years ahead of us?
It's going to get more and more impactful and more powerful.
Polished or not polished, or what do you think?
I think you're going to get two ends of the spectrum. You're going to get hyper polished and you're going to get hyper natural on both of those. The ones that sit in the sticky middle are probably going to suffer a bit. You know, the ones that are in a bog standard studio with a pink uplighter and a couple of crap fake trees behind them. I think those ones are going to suffer in terms of people who are just going to switch off to it. You know, there's a bunch of studios in London. They all look the same. Yeah. All the content that comes out of it looks identical. Yeah. That's going to be a bit of a challenge. I think Spotify making big moves in terms of discoverability. Mate, that is just a bit of a game changer.
They're coming to eat Apple's breakfast, aren't
100%. They're going to take their lunch. They're going to have a bite at what YouTube have got going on as well. YouTube are very much mindful of that, so they keep putting out press releases and stats. You know, we've got 1 billion hours of 1 billion users came onto the platform for podcasts last month on YouTube alone. So they're really trying to go, hey, we're still the platform for watching this stuff.
And this is in the shorts as well, isn't it? They're doing
the shorts
as well. Yeah.
And that's really important. And then it's I guess horses for courses. Like for example, I say there's 100,000 downloads of the podcast or sort of consumption. We get tens of thousands of people on YouTube for the podcast each month now. That's without doing the short form content because Jimbo just doesn't want to mess with the algorithm of YouTube or any of the other platforms. Doesn't do short form content to drive long form attention on the platform itself. It's fine. It is what it is. Is he missing the opportunity? Maybe maybe not. He's doing a very good job. So
I think he's busy enough as it is.
Yeah, he probably is, to be fair. Yeah. But I think that's going to become more powerful. I think for years now, the people who look after radio have gone, hey, we've still got 89% of people who listen to radio and podcasting's going up. But it's not cannibalizing. How is it not?
Yeah.
How is it not? It can't be. That generation of radio listeners, sadly, are going to figuratively and physically going to die out, and then podcasting is going to take that space.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
But podcasting is here to stay. So whereas like a Vine or a TikTok or when they pop up these social platforms, they pop up so quickly. Like Clubhouse a few years ago, popped up in a blaze of glory and then disappeared as quickly as it turned up. Podcasting isn't going anywhere, and I think that people are going to get more and more value from it.
I think the where I sit at 62 years old, am I
62? You look 52 with that beard. You having a laugh? Come on now.
I don't know whether I'm the norm or whatever. But I talk to my father-in-law and stuff like that. He's listening to podcasts. He's in his mid-70s.
Is he?
He's getting into it, and I think that those people that go with the tech, they've got their iPads and their phones all going on. They're finding stuff. They're finding digestion for whatever their crochet, whatever they're into, whatever it is. But there's a podcast for everything, isn't
100%.
there? I mean, there just is, you know. And I see that more and more. I have really enjoyed our chat. You are given a big insight to what you do. Where can everybody find you and all the team, baby?
You can go to phonic.agency if you want to find out about us, or you can go onto Instagram. I'm at James Burtt Official, which is not a joke. It's actually my handle.
No, this is real. It's official.
This is the longest that you've been nice to me, actually.
No, it isn't. Well,
you're
you're in our home, so I've got to be nice.
Fine.
Every time I ever see you, we're out somewhere else.
Yeah.
But thank you for your time today.
Thanks for the invite.
And if you've enjoyed all this chit chat that we've been having,
here he goes, podcast outro, baby. Let's go.
Come and find us here. Come and find us on YouTube and wherever you digest your stuff.
You're lovely.
Yes. And I'll probably do that again when this is finished.
No, keep it. Don't edit it. It was perfect.
Thank you very much. And if I'm lucky, I'll see you on the next one.